seeing communities come in large numbers, whether through the No Kings protest, ICE responses, are also really worth remembering how important those are. Many community members would not have seen themselves as dissenters probably in the past and see themselves finding ways to step up. Now, I think there's a couple layers of what we do moving forward, that not just talking about how we respond to the current moment, but imagining what it would look like after, and should we get a large W, what that means, and can we learn from the lessons rather than continue to repeat the cycle. Hello and welcome to Power Beyond Pride, a weekly queer change-making podcast bringing you voices and ideas from across our fierce and fabulous spectrum to transform our world. And we are so happy to be celebrating with this episode our 1-year anniversary. 1 year. Woo! I don't know. Yes. I don't know if we should have cake or, I don't know, pop out of a cake. I probably did that. But I'm Shane Lukas, one of your co-hosts here, harm reductionist, bodily autonomy activist, moonlighting as the little engine that could. And I'm joined here by so many amazing people and many co-hosts.
Hi, one of the co-hosts here, Melodie KG. I am a Minneapolis-based artivist, provocateur, etc., etc. A year of politics, tea, activism, laughs, shady moments and comments, and some emotional damage. And somehow we're all still friends. How'd we do it?
No, I really don't know sometimes, Mel. But the good thing is we did stick together, and I am your other co-host this evening, Mattie Bynum, always the loudest one in the room, whether I am just standing still or I am talking. Thank you to everyone who has listened, supported, shared clips, sent questions, and grown with us this past year. Thank you.
And I'm Daniel, poet, author, and 80s game show connoisseur. No whammies, no whammies, no whammies. Stop. Once a month, some of us Power Beyond Pride hosts gather in what we call a Reply All, where we focus on issues or questions impacting activists, share insights from our own work across communities, and take questions from the Power Beyond Pride slot. And today we celebrate not just us, but our audience with obviously good taste.
And I'm Hunter, a feral raccoon type of entity. And artist, photographer, local forager, and kind of a bit of everything, really leaning into learning more about politics and seeing where the wind takes me with that. And just all around good gay. So this show started as a vision, creating a space where queer voices, truth, politics, culture, and joy could all exist together.
One could argue, before we got on here, we talked about yarn a lot. One could talk, not only do we get to share a lot of yarns here on this amazing show, but I feel woven together. And as it's been such a joy because we're grateful to have so many great co-hosts here and be in community with so many amazing people. So again, it's wonderful to have you all here for today's anniversary. So let's kick off a little bit. Hunter, Melodie, what are some favorite moments that you've had this past year?
So for the podcast, I really enjoyed getting to do the live session with Mattie and Shane in a tent with some butt-ass naked people.
That's still my favorite memory. That was my favorite memory. Hold on.
I was like, I remember just talking, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, all right.
People might not know about this. Yeah, do you want to share a little bit more? Because we haven't aired that episode. We did record it, and I don't know if you want to share a little bit about it, but it was such an unusual experience. And we were, I don't know if you want to share a little bit about it, but it was the Bliss Bougie. I would say Bliss Bougie, maybe a little bit, but I think it was Bliss Boogie was the name of the conference.
Yes.
And it was for educators and people who are interested in bodily autonomy in their own work. And we did a panel about queer activism. Just to frame that.
Because Hunter, Shane is making this sound real beautiful. Because don't get me wrong,
it was hot.
It was a beautiful setting, but it was hot as hell. Number one, and Mel, You will love this visual. As we walk in, nobody told us that in the space that we were presenting in, they had just did naked yoga. So people were still nude and downward facing dog. And the lady goes, all you got to do is set up on the in the front. And we're walking and I'm like, yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
They were just winking at you, Mattie. They were just winking at you. That's all.
There was a lot of winking. It was really hard to have a conversation with some folks afterwards when I'm just like, I can see everything. And it's obviously it's not an issue of nudity is beautiful. I think it was the juxtaposition and being like, I did not expect to see somebody butt ass naked that I've never met before. Never. Yeah. Usually when you meet people, you're clothed. And the first time meeting several people, and it was naked as we came.
Okay, but can we get more naked conferences, please? If I could just schmooze and network at a little mixer and we're all just birthday suiting, pop off, let's go. Make my job easy.
Right. I think it would make it would make people a lot less nervous after a while if you're already just, oh, I'm naked.
I was about to say it made
a really good conversation.
Yeah, it made our panel actually go real easily because we were talking about being able to be yourself in every space. And then this one guy was like, do y'all mind if I get naked? I was like, baby, do whatever you want to do. Sure.
But naked and cross-legged. Naked and cross-legged. Just
sitting Indian style, just letting the air flow, honey. We loved it.
Incredible.
So that is an amazing memory, and one we will all share at some point. We will hopefully share that episode. We do have that episode in the queue, so maybe
not on video, just recorded.
No, just the audio, of that one. Melodie, what about you? Other than the term birthday suitin', which I think you have now just introduced into my vernacular, what sticks out for you? Birthday suitin' as a verb. Yeah, I think.
Sure. Okay, but you've heard birthday suit, right?
Yeah, I've just never really thought of it as a verb. And I love taking, that's what's one thing interesting about English, right? Is you can take almost any word and you can verb it, you can adjective it, you can what I just did right there. I adjectived the thing. And a birthday suit is just not one I've had, but I'm using it. I'm bringing it. I think we should bring that into the pop culture scenario.
Mary J. Blige would be so proud.
So proud. So I had a few like really, really good moments this year on the podcast. We've had some really cool guests that have just been like super talented and smart and helped me think differently about my activism and how I show up. And I especially love the conversation we had with Tay and Val. I follow them now and like we interact. I really enjoy them. There have been a few other folks that have really stuck out. But I think, just like the really cool conversations that we have gotten to have over the past year have been really awesome. Plus mailbag was a great conversation. Mailbag gate, mail slot gate.
The slot
was another favorite.
We still haven't determined exactly what it is, but we're rolling with it. Mailbag, mail slot.
It's been changing depending on like who's reading the script.
Not mailbag gate. So now we have a whole mailbag gate. Yes, I love it. Love it.
Slot gate.
How about you, Shane or Daniel? What's been your favorite thing this past year?
Yeah, honestly, so we had that interview with Toffer, and he said his response to what was Power Beyond Pride to him, I just stuck with me. Which, for those who didn't hear it or listen to that episode, kind of basically what he said was that you have to do something. You have to. There's like effort that you get to earn pride basically through effort, and that really stuck with me. And it kind of when there is a call to action, as in our political movement, like we should kind of up the ante and have pride in the work that we're doing, right? In the effort. And yeah, I thought that was really the most profound moment for me, and I thought it was great. That was one of my favorites for sure. The interview in particular.
I would say, and I mean, we could talk more about favorite ones later too. First of all, it is just so impactful for me to have met so many heroes that I have in the movement throughout even this past year, and even episodes that we look forward to sharing with people coming up. Whether we're talking about celebrities like Dominique Jackson, again, or Dimitri Daskalakis, those are people who I think are often on the front lines doing incredible work every day. I'm really floored oftentimes. I think Soul's interview was really powerful for me. I think talking about the power of being on the ground, really talking about intersectional work as a two-spirit activist, really also sharing really intimate stories about their own journey with their family and their journey into queerness. To me, those are moments that I could not be more grateful, because I think so many activists and people who are moved out there hear that and go, wow, I don't, maybe I feel alone, but even if I don't feel alone, I feel like this story, I don't know what it's like to move forward or the next steps are. And I feel like one thing I love about the variation of leaders that we've been able to speak with is that there are so many different stages in their experience that I think you can hear not only where people have been, but you can hear where you or other people can go. And that to me has just been really powerful. I want to call out Monica Jones' interview. Again, just having an opportunity to connect with her was just such to me, I'm really grateful for those moments. And then again, just countless numbers of people that I think, especially in the movements where I spend a lot of my time in bodily autonomy, Savannah Sly, many people who have been critical within these movements and had these conversations are just really, again, all I can say is that it just feels oftentimes like we don't get enough opportunities to connect about the human toll this work takes, as well as where that inspiration and community can help build and really amplify that work. And so I've been really just bowled over at points by some of the really honest moments. And Daniel called out Toffer's interview, which I thought was really, again, just such a great interview. I want to call out, we've had people read their poetry on here. We've had Virginia, who shares her music, and I think that episode's actually coming up. And those have just been really, again, I'm floored by those moments. I think those moments of why we do this becomes so clear.
I definitely agree. I think my favorite episode probably, I don't have one. I'm like, yo, I don't have one. I have a whole couple of them. Definitely Dominique Jackson, because that was just like meeting an idol. But like Tony, I still cannot pronounce his last name, but his show is actually coming up very soon.
Tony Z.
Say it again.
Tony Z? Is that?
Yeah, Tony Z. Yeah, we're going to go with Z. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But even his, like, just, I think the best ones for me are the ones that made me learn something new. Miss May, I never looked at sex work the way she explained it. And then just, yeah, I love the ones that I left the interview like, I feel different. Like, I learned something today. So I say those are my favorite ones. Well, it is about time for us to go to break, to our first break. But when we do come back, we will be discussing latest politics, talking more about things we have done with the show, our favorite moments. And as we go to break, I do want to give a shout out to Cole Escala. He was the first non-binary person last year to win a Tony Award. And with the Tony Awards coming up this year, I just wanted to go back and highlight that he was the first non-binary Tony Award for Best Performance by a Leading Actor in a Play for their smash off-Broadway to Broadway hit, Oh Mary. So if you think that you are listening to the show and we don't have a voice, we are here. We are queer. We are not going nowhere. We are getting louder and better. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. This is Power Beyond Pride, a queer change-making podcast. And I am Daniel with my co-hosts, Mattie, Melodie, Hunter, and Shane. Since the launch of the podcast, we experience unprecedented political turmoil, including deep polarizations regarding LGBTQ plus rights, landmark regressive Supreme Court rulings, both contributing to a kind of capitulation to and an overall redirection towards fascistic governance. Given the constant assaults on our hearts and minds by the ruling class, in what ways, if any, have your communities and or the movements you've been working in been able to move the needle forward or get W's in the past 12 months?
A win now?
Well, what feels like a win? I mean, I do think that there's, I think I think we could identify some things. I think I could.
I mean,
I can identify a few wins recently, especially when it comes to redistricting. I can never say this word without laughing, but redistricting. But other than that, I don't really see where we want anything. Yeah.
I think that we're also like, it seems like we're looking at this on a bigger scale of what is going on politically or what is going on within the larger environment. And I frequently have to pull myself out of that because, yes, the world is enveloped in so many shitty things that are going on. But the big rule in my house is, what are you doing to make peace for yourself? And so for me, this past year has been a lot of like coping with grief and loss, but also creating peace for myself in different ways that maybe I haven't before. And sometimes I move in silence when I'm creating my own peace and I don't invite people into that. And I had people recently asking me like, well, what have you been up to? I haven't really seen or heard from you. And I'm like, making my own peace. Said the rest of the world is shitty. Why do I need to have that in my home? This is something that people of color, Black folks, we've been dealing with for fucking ever. So at the end of the day gonna end. And what are you doing to create that peace for yourself in it? So while it may be hard to look at things on a bigger scale of like, where are the wins, where are the victories that we're having on a societal basis, I think sometimes what we need to do is to not carry that with us if we have the space and capacity to do so, because it can be really hard when you're carrying that with you all the time. That impacts your health. It impacts your relationship with others. It impacts your ability to just look beyond what is right here. And so I think that that's also my gentle way of saying fuck you to the bad things.
My community showed up and started a gun club. So just in stark contrast to what you're saying, Hunter, beautiful.
Look, I can have a piece of steel.
I'm about to say, I'm creating peace and you're holding your peace. Hey, which one?
Look. Yeah. Okay. See, Southerners and Midwesterners.
Yes.
We like that. Yeah.
We strongly uphold gun rights in this house.
Hello.
Yes. Okay, great. So for those of you who don't know what I'm referring to, I'm in Minneapolis, right? In Minneapolis over the past few months we had our day. We had our little moment of fame. Shit's still happening, shit's still scary, but the media has mostly moved on, right? But during the thick of the ICE occupation, sex workers really stepped up in my community in terms of distributing mutual aid, organizing around political strategy to help eviction moratoriums, and then also the local SWAP chapter, the Sex Workers Outreach Project Minneapolis, started a gun club for sex workers. And I definitely went and I definitely shot and I did go great. So it was a really cool moment for sex workers and for the sexually deviant over here as we just continue to show up for our communities the way that we always have as folks who are either queer or queer adjacent.
I love you sharing that. I think it's interesting in some ways, Melodie, and Melodie and Hunter, both of you are kind of hitting on, I think there's probably multiple dimensions in which we're getting W's. Part of it is the individual resilience learned from our elders, learned from our community members, and really who recognize that the system has never been good. Like, we don't need to belabor that point. I think we all know the system has always been oppressive in its own ways, in many ways. and that the fight has been going for a long period of time. And there are many elders and community members who reflect and remind us that some of the advances we've made did come at costs, and preserving them is also critical and part of our work. I love that we're seeing like small groups. You mentioned SWAP, Melodie, but like other small groups, and we're seeing groups kind of come together in meaningful ways, somewhat emboldened by the current moment to figure out how they can get past maybe minor grievances, which have sort of in our progressive movement oftentimes undermined some of that work. And I think there is this sort of sense of collective purpose in responding to the certainly Christo-fascist movements of the nation as of right now. But then also, I want to call out, you mentioned, Melodie, response to the ICE raids, seeing communities come in large numbers, whether through the No Kings protest, through the ICE responses, through the networks that have happened, are also really worth remembering how important those are, because many community members would not have seen themselves as, I would say, dissenters probably in the past, and see themselves recognizing what's happening and finding ways to step up. Now, are there enough? No. There's certainly a lot of work to be done to take back much of the power that has been centralized in spaces these days. But I think there's a couple layers of what we do moving forward there, in terms of not just talking about how we respond to the current moment, but imagining what it would look like after, and should we get a large W, what that means, and can we learn from the lessons rather than continue to repeat the cycle? Because that's, I think, my fear is that we get past this moment and then people are like, well, we're done. And like that, as we have seen in many instances, undoes some of that work. But I do think there have been some pretty incredible wins. I also think states like New York, California, those which see themselves as bastions of progressivism, or a I don't know what you want to call it, a practical progressivism, have really also developed a system where their own expectations have been set up a little bit more, or leveled up a bit. And I mentioned New York particularly. I think the election of Mamdani and him continuing to deliver. It's important to also mention Wu in Boston. I feel like we talk about Mamdani a lot. I as a woman of color in leadership, I think Wu deserves a lot of credit for what she's doing at Boston, and that Mamdani is learning and following some of those practices in really important ways. But I also think that Hochul in New York, who's not unflawed, has continued to move some progressive policies forward, including universal childcare in New York, at a time when many federal government strategies had been to reduce services. And so I do think that there are some wins in the sense of imagination of what a more socialist democratic approach or more community-based approach could look like. And that's not even getting into the amount of trans leadership that states like New York have elevated into positions and leadership, that there is this moment. Now, does that lead to civil war? Don't know. Don't want to rain on that parade yet. But I'm saying some of the wins are that there have been some movement in really constructive directions. And a lot of that really founded in, I think, a lot of queer leadership, a lot of leadership from our trans community members, a lot of leadership from Feminine of Center and Femmes, a lot of Black femmes, certainly leading in many of those states, both California and New York as well. And so there's a lot of things, I think, to celebrate, even in this moment.
I want to say, though, when you had mentioned universal childcare in New York, we also got to give props to New Mexico for being the first state to introduce universal childcare. So I had to make sure to bring that into the fold.
Props to New York. I know New Mexico. All the news. All the New Mexico. Well, maybe not New Jersey, but like New Mexico. We love you, New Jersey. We do love you too. But New Mexico, major props. Thank you for sharing that.
So this next topic has sparked a lot of controversy online, especially as Pride Month approaches. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee recently signed a resolution officially recognizing June as what lawmakers are calling Nuclear Family Month. This symbolic measure promotes what it describes as the traditional family structure: one husband, one wife, and their biological, adopted, or foster children as the foundation of society. With June being Pride Month, what kind of message does this send to LGBTQ families and people whose lives don't fit into one traditional definition of family? And do symbolic measures like this deepen cultural division more than they strengthen community values?
I think the fact that I did not even hear about this, I think kind of speaks to
Me
our moment
neither.
where like I care about like the affordability of our lives and stuff like that. And obviously I care about an expansive idea of what family is, obvious and as part of like a generation of capital Q, and resistance to kind of this biological determinism of family. I also just it seems like it's just like straight pride. It's just some noise in the background, and I didn't clock it because it's kind of it just seems like bullshit that they're trying to drum up to be like a I don't know, had to have some kind of purchase in the coming elections, right? Like
It's trying so hard. The person who suggested this is totally getting head in a rest area. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, it's like the targeted video ads that I get in YouTube, I get a lot of AG races for Alabama, even though I live in Louisiana. It's wild. And it's really kind of the dregs of society saying, "Oh, I'm aligned with Trump and I want to defend and I want to defend our children from uh, the unfair uh, the unfair sports situation with trans athletes." It's like you're not talking about shit that is like pressed up in people's lives on the daily. And I can't think of, even though it is LGBTQ adjacent, I can't think of something so more like tone deaf to people's needs at the moment than this. And
I
it's
mean,
just
this
like
also
part and parcel of where we are, right? We're just like, look over there, and you're like, let's look over there, and get dragged into a side quest discourse on I don't even know what anymore. Like this is like the equivalent of straight pride, just like whatever.
But you know what
Fuck off.
bothers me about this whole topic is what bothers me is you give a person an inch and they take a mile. What are you going to do after this? Because I do have an issue with this topic because not just for LGBTQ plus families, but I guess growing up since my mom was a single mother, I'm not a traditional nuclear family, like just because I just grew up with a mom instead of a mom and a dad. So I think for me, I think it is a issue that we really need to push back on because yet again, you give Tennessee an inch and we've seen what they've taken with their inches so far. You know what I'm saying? Like, where do we stop? Because June has always been Pride Month. We know this. So anybody who pays attention to anything, we know that June is Pride Month. I find this as an inch trying to become a mom.
there's a lot of structural issues with this as well, because not only does it have more of a direct impact on maybe LGBTQ plus folk, but also for folks who may not be queer or queer adjacent and how their family structure is. And it's basically saying that if you are not like this, then you are not right. It's the dichotomy of good versus bad. And that's the part where I'm just like, are folks seeing this? Because this isn't just a one social group issue. And like Mattie was saying, I grew up with a single parent. And I was also raised in a strongly matriarchal household. Or yeah. So for me, I'm just like, what does that mean? I grew up relatively okay. I turned out relatively okay, I should say. So what is
You're
that?
fabulous.
I appreciate it. Therapy.
But what you're hitting on, Hunter and Mattie, is, I mean, it's just a statistical fact that significant numbers of people will have non-traditional families, and by non-traditional can mean so many things. And add to that young people they're not nostalgic for whatever version of this they're putting out there. And the stats on that are pretty clear, particularly when we talk about young cis women. But like when we look at where they and when they wish to become parents, it is far later. When they look to get married, if they want to get married, because the number of individuals who desire that is lower. Not that they don't want to have relationships. It's just they're like, these systems didn't really work for my parents, that nobody's really happy in these quote unquote nuclear is kind of such a funny term too, because last time I checked, it killed you. Like I always find the attachment of that such a weird, I understand it's the timing because it's 1950s correlative, but like it's also kind of appropriate because it just explodes. Like you're trying to fit into this model and eventually it combusts.
Wasn't family explosive back then? Let's just think about it.
I mean, if people had the agency to leave, I mean, again, people romanticize the 50s, but you had high levels of illiteracy. You had high levels of domestic assault. You had high levels of drug and alcohol usage. People forget that there were a lot of things that we brought back from World War II, and drugs was one of them. Like lots of things that make that era complicated. And the nostalgia for it is, again, who does it serve? It serves whatever kind of oppressive systems were functional at the time. And that MAGA mentality just is, again, it's a very naive perspective of the world. And obviously this is intended to be and tamp down people's sense around queer inclusion. But to everyone's point, the impact of it is actually far reaching beyond that.
I mean, I don't think we're necessarily ceding discursive ground by Governor Fuckface Asshat, like making a resolution when there are always multiple months being multiple things at the same time, like mental health awareness time, which is the same month as whatever. So, I mean, I just kind of feel like he's trying to make a thing that's not a thing. Like younger people with the lived experience of not being in a nuclear family recognize that this is immaterial to their lives, right? And not to say that they're this like not having the idea of quote unquote alternative ideas of or models of families is a detriment to especially young individuals. I just don't see this as being other than some kind of like weird and idiotic kind of culture war play that I hope Tennessee voters are kind of like, what are you fucking talking about? Like, make our gas prices go down. Please do that instead.
Well, I'll just add one more thing and we're gonna head out to break. But what I'll say is I think, yes, it feels very naive as a request. I do want to flag that the subtle movements that people made toward gender, clarity. I'm not sure the right word here to use, but a lot of our trans communities were impacted because slow sort of steps were made to create distinguishing pieces in the public conversation in many states. And again, many of our communities face that around their passport access and a lot of federal, again, a lot of other things that have been done unilaterally. But I think some things like this, there is a reason to look at them with caution, simply because it is trying to redefine or take any of the progress and kind of undermine that progress. So again, will it work? I would like to think no. I do think it's worth our communities reflecting on that because, again, our trans community members are facing this on a regular basis, and it did creep up slowly but surely over time. And I want to make sure that we don't miss that either. That's real. But no matter the outcomes, history proves our communities know how to tap into the wellspring of resilience and creativity to face whatever the world throws at us. That is what makes us amazing. And that's great. But when we come back, we're going to turn our attention to you, our listeners. We've got your questions and a special final message to close out this anniversary episode. So stay with us.
Welcome back to Power Beyond Pride, our anniversary Reply All show. We are having so much fun, laughing, talking, reminiscing. And also, as we always do, get down to business and talk politics and current events. I am joined tonight with my amazing co-hosts, Melodie, Shane, Daniel, and Hunter. And we are queer change makers ourselves. So it's time for us to get into our mail. I'm not going to say box, bag, slot, none of that. I'll let our resident male person, since her name is male, I will say male person, come up with that name for us. But yeah, Shane, I think you have the first. No, Melody has the first question.
Before our first question, though, I want to take us to a moment remembering the life of Jason Collins. He passed away recently from a brain tumor. He was the NBA's first openly gay player. Rest in power, friend.
Yeah.
Totally. Took a lot of courage. We don't see a lot of athletes who step into that space. And so we definitely appreciate Jason Collins doing that.
And a great basketball player.
Our first question comes from Christopher L. from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Christopher asks, after such a difficult year politically, how do you stay hopeful? Good question.
Actually, Hunter talked about that earlier. I think is finding peace and hope in your own personal life. Because one thing we can't control every day is politics. We can go out and vote. We can get out there and get our message. But your daily disposition, for me, I would say how I stay hopeful is just keeping my peace and my sanity intact. So when I do take those times to withdraw, I have a place to come to.
I'll throw in music. One thing that I think is just really powerful in the current moment, and whether it's Ray's album, this album it contains hope, or you're talking about Jill Scott's most recent album and a beautiful, great song called Be Great. And then there, I think there is, and even Tank and Banga's actually new album is also really, really great about this. There's an artist named Jorge Drexler and his album Taraka. It's really brilliant. They're all speaking into this moment, I think, because America's got its own challenges, but the rest of the world is also dealing with a great deal of friction on many different levels. I think you can channel musicians who are to me, have always been influential in my mood and my way of seeing the world and the soundtrack to my own defiance and fight. And I am grateful for that creativity, that artistry. So the thing that keeps me certainly hopeful is the music, as well as the community I get to keep and get to have around me. So that goes without saying, but the people around you also matter a great deal. But I would say if something broadly, music and continuing to bring those sounds back in on the hard days.
For me, it's like other arts too. Patronize the arts. Art has always been a vehicle for politics and culture, obviously. So, and there's some really cool art happening, especially around queer identity and politics. And I'm always going to advocate for go to a drag show, go to a burlesque show, go see your local neighborhood stripper. That'll bring you some joy, some titty in the face.
Or they.
Or he needs some booty in the face, some ball in the face. Yeah, let's go.
I've never been sad while being motorboated, so I'm just saying.
I'm so glad our minds on the same level. I'm about to say, teabagging has always been a great pastime. I don't know. I mean, there's always, you can only go up from here.
Yeah. I just want to kind of expand on what Melody and Shane was saying. I think I've just been like leaning in on like the culture workers who are also, their creativity is also bound up with resistance. And so obviously my bag is the poetry, and I've been reading a lot of poetry. And so it's like anthologies like Homosexual Intifada, which just came out. It's anthology of queer Palestinian writers. Super excited about that. Yeah, I've been finding a lot of refuge in those cultural producers who are creating something beautiful or engaging in spite of all these things. And it keeps me in it while not being just like wallowing in like the negativity and the horrible shit of it all. That there are still forms of resistance that are creative and powerful, not just not just horrible or really taxing, right?
And you mentioned, right, Scola's win. Like, I love that in the arts, we're seeing trans stories. We're seeing non-binary representation. We're seeing artists. Lineker, for example, in Brazil is a trans artist who won all the South American music awards in this last year and produces phenomenal R&B that is just gorgeous. And like, to me, there is so much genre breaking happening across the arts, and whether it is in poetry or film or music, I think that looking to creativity and those voices to help remind us what it means to be bold and have that courage. And that includes your strippers, that includes all of the amazing performances, the Miss Monas of the world, which encourage us to be our biggest, baddest ass self. So,
and shout out to Mamdani, because frankly, he's the only thing that gives me joy politically these days. So I'm just like, oh, it's like a salve. I don't know.
I think also, like, for me, I know we're talking about a lot of things that are like the present wins, or like the things that are like, we're seeing a change in like how we are more visible in the spotlight. But I think also it's this last year especially has given me a lot of opportunity to look back on voices from the past. And I don't mean that as like the distant past, but even there's been a very interesting new engagement in Southern Gothic. And because there is a deep connection to what we're seeing now, as well as the narrative of Southern Gothic stories, as they are representation of post-Reconstruction from the Civil War. And so we're seeing a lot of that revivalism come back, and also the ways that people evolved in their thoughts, or the ways that people were pulling the skeletons out of the closet and saying, if you want to take care of the base of the house, you need to empty things out in the basement. And so I really have just been fascinated by the idea of Southern Gothic revival. And it is very connected to what we're dealing with right now. And I mean, if folks are interested, pull up Beloved, for instance. Completely. Yeah. Or The Bluest Eye. But also, I think my first introduction, I was maybe in 9th grade. My first introduction to Southern Gothic was As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. And so I really also want to make sure that I just reinforce that to folks of we're in a period of learning and not just of suffering. And we can learn from what other people have shared in that means of learning and staying hopeful, of opening up at least our own narrative and what we're thinking. So yeah, that can lead into the next question. Our next question comes from Sky G from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. What advice would you give someone who is struggling to fully embrace themselves?
I think if I was talking to a person that is struggling to find themselves, I would definitely tell them, number one, spend time with yourself. That might sound crazy, but I mean, really spend time with yourself and knock the noise out around you so you can really hear everything about who you are. But find things that create joy in your life. Because I think if you can figure out what creates joy, then you can figure out how to embrace joy, which will then have you to be able to embrace yourself and see yourself for who you are.
It's a tough one to answer in the current climate, because one of the big questions is where that struggle is coming from. Is it coming from your own ability to explore and spend time with your feelings and be it in a space that is non-judgmental, so that you're able to process your own relationship to your gender, your desire, to all of these pieces? And if you're in a climate or an environment where that is very oppressed, that's really tough. And in this current climate, there are so many, we made so many movements across the nation in positive directions, and now we're seeing those close down. So that isn't signaling to people who are wrestling with those conversations sometimes that it is safe to have those conversations. So I would say, is that struggle coming from external sources, or is it coming from your own introduction of ideas and what's possible in yourself? Because that is for that internal journey, that's oftentimes breaking and having a grieving, really, of what you may have at one point expected your journey to be, and be wrestling with the feelings or the spaces that you are about what is possible, and really starting to celebrate and welcome that possibility, that unknowing. It's what I love about queerness in some ways, is that it is still always this reconfiguring of a certainty that we are spending our lives understanding, like, how is my body changing? How am I changing? How are my desires changing? How are all of these relationships changing? And beginning to be comfortable with that. But that oftentimes comes into conflict with a world that says, this is how you're supposed to be. This is how you have to be. This is how, and that own your own process of managing that. So, if it's external, then my hope is that you get more opportunities to give yourself space to explore. And if that is going to another location or finding a community that is just open to those conversations, not giving you a specific direction, but just open to that exploration for yourself. And if it's coming internally, if the call's coming from inside the house, really giving yourself some space to grieve about the path forward, but also excitement about what's possible.
Yeah, I worry about being a little bit overly prescriptive about about advice as someone who's lost two friends who've taken their own lives. And so I'm just going to kind of say what I probably a lot of people would say, which is to find someone to talk to. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a professional, although that's a great idea for sure. But finding someone that can be a confidant that you can talk about what the struggle is, what are the conditions or circumstances that make one feels like they're unable to be themselves at that moment, and then not have too high of expectations, and having those conversations, because it's really going to be, I would expect or suspect that it's part of a kind of a discovery, and the moment of self-embrace isn't a light switch where it just turns on, but as a process, and likewise finding people to who you can be yourself around as well isn't just like, I just found the one person and then the floodgates open. So the baby step that I would just say is to seek someone that you can be forthright, and you hopefully at least someone whose empathy and compassion extends to you, and hopefully they'll be that person that you hope they are.
I think for at least for several of us, it's time that becomes the thing that allows us to fully embrace ourselves. And time, especially in the queer community, is a luxury. And so there's not a fix it button, like a instant button and then everything is okay. But it just takes time, and that's also internally of just, what do I like about myself? And I know when I was in my 20s, I would say, well, if I get to X, then I'll be happy. And then you have to think about it as like, what does that matter? Why does that timeline matter? Why do you have to be happy? Like, why do you have to wait for that thing to happen in order to allow yourself to be happy, or to experience joy, or to experience pleasure, or any of those sensations? And I agree with Daniel. You have to create the friendships that you want and start out with one that can become two, but also understand that for as many people as you may have around you, you could still be the loneliest person in the room if you don't allow
Mm.
yourself to know who you are and allow yourself to evolve and to change. And I mean, I don't think it was until I hit my like mid 30s that I was just like, I don't give a fuck about what people say about me. That became very prominent. Like once I hit like maybe about 34, I was just like, why do I care?
Yeah.
And so, like I said, time is the biggest luxury.
Well, it's really awesome to get these questions from our listeners who are activists and icons from around the country. If you have any questions, make sure to send it to us to mailbag at powerbeyondpride.com, or visit the site at powerbeyondpride.com to submit your questions.
Or even better, send us a video at any of our social channels. We want to see you, hear you, and be in community with you.
I love it. And also, while you're on those social channels, remember to rank us. If you like us, give us 5 stars. If you don't like us, tell some
Don't do anything.
Don't do anything. Just, but remember to favorite us, subscribe, all the rest of that. But definitely, we do appreciate you giving us some of those 5-star reviews. That's all the time we have for this very special Reply All, our first year of Power Beyond Pride. I know I said it before, but I cannot express how much I adore and am grateful for all the co-hosts, as well as, and we'll give our thanks for this episode for all of our production team, but also our production team as well. This is not possible without all these incredible people who just every day are contributing in their own communities. And then I'm so grateful to be alongside you here for this podcast. So I just want to give you lots of love and kisses and hugs and all of that. So this went by so fast this year, and we are still creating. We have so many episodes we're excited for you to hear. We are still loving and we are still fighting, and we look forward to fighting with all of you alongside. I'm your co-host, Shane Lukas. I am a lifelong harm reductionist and a bodily autonomy activist. And I would say the little engine that could certainly is kind of a good model, but I couldn't do it without having so many amazing people on the same tracks and doing the same work. So you can follow me at all my socials. Actually, you can check out my newly launched site, shanelukas.com. And I'm going to throw in a little plug for my new TED Talk, which is not out yet, but you can go check out my first TED Talk, and my second TED Talk should be out soon. So please check that out, shanelukas.com. You can get my socials there.
And I'm your co-host, Melodie KG, Minneapolis-based provocateur and artivist. You can find me at Melodie KG on Instagram and melodiekg.substack.com to see my writing. And remember to subscribe and get your friends to subscribe to Power Beyond Pride wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a review. It helps others discover us and see how cool we are. So check us out at our site at powerbeyondpride.com.
And I'm your co-host, Daniel, and you can follow me at strongplum on Instagram and Upscrolled. Contrary to the previous episode, I am no longer on TikTok. I'm not doing shirtless content there anymore. To our listeners, guests, supporters, activists.
There's a thirst trap drought.
Activists, artists, and chosen family, we thank you for making our community what it is.
I am Mattie Bynum, your other co-host, and always the loudest one in the room, even on mute. You saw the facial expressions if you're watching the video, okay? But instead of giving hello, but I do want to take a moment and shout out Shane, because I do want to say this real quick. Shane, none of this would be possible if you hadn't have even had the idea to come together and ask all of us to come on a show and do this with you. So we do want to give you thanks and props for being the brain of this breakdown.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You can follow me on Instagram at MattieSmall737 or Facebook at just simply Mattie Bynum, because that's who I am. We celebrate 1 year of Power Beyond Pride. We're excited about it, but we want everyone listening to remember something, and that is you're not alone. You're not invisible, and your story does matter. Power Beyond Pride is a project from A Great Idea, a queer-owned design and content agency. Learn more about agreatidea.com at agreatidea.com.
And lastly, I'm your co-host, Hunter, and you can follow me on Instagram at Hunter Photography. It's HNTR Graphy, because I'm super creative. Thank you for growing with us this past year, and stick with us for many, many years to come. This episode is produced by Shane Lukas. Mattie Bynum is the project developer. Our editor is Jared Redding, with support from Ian Wilson.
And we are all part of this podcast awesome host team, which you've heard me shout out. And I, again, want to shout out also our co-host team members who are not with us for this episode. Sean, Kenyon, we see you and adore you, as well as to Kate, who has joined us throughout this year. We could not do the show without all of you. And so again, thank you so much. Remember to send in your questions and comments at powerbeyondpride.com.
And check out our new episodes each week. We look forward to queer change making with you next time. Thank you from all of us here at Power Beyond Pride. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
We did it.
Woo!